Miriam didn't cry when her husband sent a message at 2:14 a.m. asking for divorce. She didn't cry when, just a week later, his new fiancé appeared in the family group chat like it was the most natural thing in the world. Instead, she kept her Saturdays sacred, delivering homemade soup and groceries to her in-laws, pretending nothing had changed. But on Thanksgiving, everything cracked. She heard a single sentence float through the air like a knife. "Now I can finally open that account in my name." The room went still. And in that breathless silence, Miriam realized this wasn't about love being lost. It was a plan. And she had been the only one not in on it. She had always believed in the power of timing, how the ancient grandfather clock at her library struck precisely at noon, signaling lunch for the regulars. But that night, when her phone buzzed at exactly 2:14 a.m., Miriam knew something in her life's rhythm had broken. The message was short. "Miriam, I've made a decision. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be." She stared at the screen, not thinking of her husband Edmund, but of the butternut squash soup chilling in her fridge. She had planned to bring it to his parents, like always. By morning, her number was blocked. The house, once humming with quiet rituals and soft conversation, now echoed with only the tick of that same grandfather clock. When she called Dorothy, Edmund's mother, the words between them came wrapped in politeness and glass. "Oh, he mentioned some things," Dorothy said in a careful tone. "I'm sure a little counseling could help." But Miriam caught the emphasis, "he mentioned." As if his version was the only one allowed to exist. Walter, Edmund's diabetic father, picked up briefly to ask about her book club. In the background, Miriam heard Dorothy whisper, "Don't encourage her to come around more than necessary." Still, Saturday came. Miriam packed the usual, vegetable barley soup, sugar-free cookies for Walter, organic groceries from the market across town. The drive had once been calming. That day, it felt like heading toward a church that no longer welcomed her prayers. Dorothy opened the door with a smile she saved for door-to-door salespeople. "Oh, you really didn't have to keep doing this, dear. We're managing fine." Behind her, Walter called out brightly, "Is that Miriam? Tell her I loved those library books." Dorothy's smile thinned, just slightly. Miriam placed the containers on the kitchen counter. Dorothy neither helped nor moved to put them away. "Where's Edmund staying?" Miriam gently asked. "With his sister. He needs some time to think." The word to think hung in the air like a prize, as if Edmund's reflection was noble and Miriam's presence a disturbance. As she turned to leave, Walter's voice rang again. "Aren't you going to put the soup in the fridge?" Miriam paused near the living room window. Through the glass, she saw Dorothy walk straight to the outside garbage can. The containers landed with soft, final thuds. Inside, a phone rang. As Miriam stepped outside, she caught voices through the kitchen window. "She hasn't figured it out yet." No, keep it between us." "Can you believe she brought food again?" Then came a laugh, cold, hollow, and deeply cruel. "That woman has no clue what's really going on." Miriam froze, her hand on the car door. That's when she heard the sharp, deliberate sound of heels on hard wood. Turning slightly, she saw Constance, Dorothy's older sister, descending the stairs. Once a federal judge, Constance now lived quietly in the cottage next door. But her eyes missed nothing. Their eyes met through the window, just for a moment. She said nothing. And in that flicker of silence, something passed between them. Not pity, but recognition. Constance walked into the kitchen. The phone call ended. And Miriam, for the first time, felt the weight of that soup in her chest, not just her hands. At home, she noticed Edmund's books were gone from the reading nook. Gaps remained, like missing teeth in the smile of a house that no longer belonged to her. And one question repeated in her mind like the echo of a clock's chime. What did Dorothy mean by, "She hasn't figured it out yet"? And why did Constance look at her as if she was solving a puzzle Miriam didn't even know existed? Outside, the grandfather clock in her library chimed 9 times. But the rhythm felt off, as if even time itself was keeping secrets. In 3 months, everything would become clear. But first, there would be Thanksgiving. The phone in her pocket buzzed with a new message. Unknown number. The words made her blood chill. Actually, the real story began 3 months before the divorce. Miriam's hands trembled as she screenshot the message. Something told her she would need evidence before this was over. The living room fell silent except for the defiant tick of time, counting down to truths she wasn't ready to discover. 3 months had passed since the divorce papers were signed. The anonymous message Miriam received that night had led nowhere. When she tried calling back, the number was already disconnected. Life had settled into a strange routine. She still delivered groceries. They no longer got discarded, at least not while she watched. Dorothy had learned to time her trips to the garbage can more carefully. Thanksgiving arrived with November's first frost. And with it, a dinner invitation that Miriam suspected she wasn't meant to receive. Family only, Dorothy had said when Walter asked if Miriam was coming. But Constance had called her directly. Please join us, my dear. Some conversations require witnesses. Miriam arrived carrying cranberry sauce and a sugar-free pumpkin pie. The driveway was crowded with unfamiliar cars. Except one, Edmund's Lexus parked right by the door. Kendra answered the door. Tall, trim, serene. Even in a modest sweater, she radiated yoga instructor confidence. "Oh, you're the ex-wife," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm Kendra. Edmund's fiancé." The word fiancé struck Miriam like a slap. Still, she kept quiet politely. Inside, the house buzzed with voices she had known for years. Her relative Lisa barely looked up from her wine. Cousins exchanged glances they didn't bother to hide. Walter wheeled forward to greet her. His diabetes meds were still lined up on the side table. "Miriam, you look wonderful. How's the reading group?" Before she could answer, Dorothy appeared with the precision of a hostess. "Let's get you settled, dear. We've put you at the children's table." The children's table had only one chair. Miriam set her dishes on the counter. Kendra stepped in and subtly moved them to a less visible spot. The main table was full. 17 adults. Warm lighting. Easy laughter. Miriam ate alone. From a distance, she listened to fragments about Edmund's new start, and finally finding happiness. Constance sat across the room. She scribbled in her leather journal, calm and focused. Dessert was served to the main table first. Miriam's slice arrived late. Lisa's voice cut through the room. "How pathetic, still showing up where you're not wanted." Kendra giggled. "Some people just can't take a hint, can they?" Edmund shifted in his seat but said nothing. Miriam stood, plate untouched. "Thank you for having me," she said. "Edmund, I hope you find everything you're looking for." She turned to leave. Walter called out, "Miriam, wait. Take some leftovers. You brought so much." Dorothy stepped in quickly. "Oh, she doesn't need to trouble herself with cleanup." But it was too late. Miriam had paused near the kitchen island. The conversation at the adult table was still going. Kendra's voice rose slightly. "So when do you think we can start moving forward with the account situation?" Dorothy's wine glass trembled. Lisa leaned in. "Are you sure about doing it again? After what happened with Sarah?" "Who's Sarah?" Edmund asked. He looked from face to face. A long silence. Kendra let out a brittle laugh. Oh, just family financial planning. Making sure everything's organized properly. Dorothy jumped in. Yes, just making sure Kendra can contribute properly to the family finances. Constance's pen stopped moving. Kendra, perhaps emboldened by wine, continued. Well, now I can open an account in my name, finally. No more complications. The room fell completely silent. Every person at that table froze, 17 pairs of eyes suddenly finding their plates incredibly interesting. Walter looked confused. An account? What kind of account? Dorothy forced a laugh. Oh, you know how young people manage money these days. So complicated. But Miriam noticed something else. No one was looking at anyone. Edmund's face had gone pale. Lisa was checking her phone like it was urgent. Several others began glancing at their watches. One by one, each person turned toward the antique grandfather clock in the corner. Then, almost like choreography, they all turned to face Miriam. Standing there in her cardigan and practical shoes, she felt like a deer cornered by something far more cunning than wolves. But Constance's gaze cut through the tension. She wasn't looking at Miriam with pity. She was looking at her with quiet approval. Deliberately, Constance pulled out her phone. She opened the camera app and began to record. No one noticed. The silence dragged until Dorothy broke it. Well, who wants coffee? The spell cracked. People resumed their conversations, but the rhythm was off, like actors picking up lines after losing the script. This time, Miriam didn't just slip away. She moved with grace. As she reached for her coat, she heard Kendra whisper to Edmund. That was close. We can't let her figure anything out before. Before what? Edmund hissed. Nothing. Forget I said anything. Miriam stepped into the cold night. Her breath fogged the air. Through the window, she saw Constance still at the table, phone in hand. Their eyes met through the glass. Constance gave her the slightest nod. Miriam walked toward her car, mind racing. An account in Kendra's name. Complications. Sarah. The way everyone looked at the clock. Then at her. As if they were waiting for something. As if they knew something she didn't. Miriam started the engine. Her hands trembled slightly. In the rearview mirror, she saw Constance exit the house. The older woman walked with purpose back to her cottage. Her phone never left her hand. Miriam's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. The video from tonight shows everything. H, can you meet tomorrow? H. Helena. Constance's middle name. Miriam pulled over. She took a screenshot, just like she had with the first message. Now there were two pieces of evidence. Something was forming. A collection. A case. She thought again about the clock. The synchronized glances. Then every eye on her. As if they were rehearsing something. As if she had wandered into a scene meant to unfold without her. But Miriam had lived with these people for 25 years. She knew their tells. Their lies. And this was bigger than a bank account. This was something darker. The grandfather clock chimed again. 11 strikes. The sound echoed into the silence. Not just marking time. Marking secrets. And something that was just beginning. But for the first time, Miriam wasn't counting down to a mystery. She was counting down to the truth. The meeting with Constance came sooner than expected. Black Friday brought chaos no one saw coming. Federal agents raided Edmund's financial firm at dawn. The morning news showed shaky footage, boxes carried out, reporters shouting. Investment fraud. Elderly victims. Miriam's phone rang as she watched the screen. Can you come to my cottage immediately? Constance's voice was calm, but something in it pressed against panic. Her home smelled of old pages and peppermint tea. Books. Legal journals. Years of justice lived there. Constance poured tea with hands steadier than most 30-year-olds. I need to show you something, she said. Several things, actually. She handed Miriam a manila folder. Label, Financial Irregularities, 2024. Inside, bank statements, screenshots, phone transcripts. I've been documenting issues in the family finances for months. Kendra entered our lives 6 months ago. Since then, Walter's accounts have been accessed again and again. Miriam scanned a statement. These withdrawals, they're massive. $30,000. $25,000. Always just under the reporting threshold. Constance opened her laptop. I recorded something from Thanksgiving. Watch closely. The screen played back the dinner scene from Constance's angle. Miriam saw herself at the kitchen island. Then she saw what she'd missed. Kendra's eyes met Lisa's. Dorothy lifted her wine glass, too casually. A nod. A signal. A setup. They were coordinating, Miriam said quietly. Constance nodded. And there's more. She clicked on a second audio file. Dorothy's voice came through clear. The deadline is December 1st. Make sure the transfers are complete before then. If she finds out before we're ready. The recording cut off. Miriam felt the room tilt. Dorothy knew, she whispered. She's part of this. They've been planning it since before the divorce, Constance said. Kendra had to be introduced as family first. She pulled out another folder. Printed emails. I created a dummy account to monitor them. Kendra has used multiple names. Multiple social security numbers. The emails showed meetings. Fake advisors. Shady portfolios. A reference, the previous situation with Sarah. Miriam's chest tightened. Who's Sarah? Kendra's previous fiancé's mother, Constance explained. She lost her savings in a bad investment. The man, James Patterson, died of a heart attack 2 months later. Kendra vanished after the funeral. Constance held up a newspaper clipping. James Patterson's obituary. In the photo, Kendra at the funeral. Comforting an old woman. But the caption read, Kelly Patterson. She's done this before, Miriam breathed. A voice called from outside. Constance. Are you home? The FBI is here. 3 dark-suited agents approached Walter's house. Dorothy appeared at the door. Her composure cracked. One agent held a warrant. Another carried a laptop bag. Kendra was gone. Constance moved quickly to the phone by the window. Dr. Peterson? This is Constance. I need you to meet Miriam at your office immediately. Bring Walter's medical files. She hung up. Walter's doctor has been trying to reach Dorothy for weeks, she said. His blood sugar levels have been dangerously unstable since August. Miriam blinked. August. That's when she stopped bringing food that was actually eaten. Dr. Peterson suspects insulin tampering, Constance said. Or worse, deliberate withholding. The implication struck hard. Like a punch wrapped in silence. They were trying to make Walter sick enough to hand over financial control? Elder abuse takes many forms, Constance said. They needed him impaired, but not deceased. Not yet. Constance began gathering documents. Kendra made a mistake at Thanksgiving, she continued. She admitted she could finally open the account. That means she was waiting for legal clearance. Waiting for what? Miriam asked. Medical incapacity papers, Constance said. If Walter were declared unable to manage his finances. Miriam's eyes widened. She thought of the wine Walter drank at dinner. Unusual. Dangerous for a diabetic. She remembered the way everyone looked at the clock. The synchronized glances. They were timing his medications, she whispered. Making sure he'd have episodes at specific times. Constance nodded, her expression grim. Dr. Peterson has recorded severe hypoglycemic events. They don't match Walter's normal patterns. And they began the week Kendra entered the family. Through the window, Edmund arrived at the house. His face was pale. He spoke rapidly to the FBI agents. He pointed toward the house. Dorothy came outside. She said something. Then pointed directly at Constance's cottage. We need to leave. Now, Constance calmly said. She handed Miriam a thumb drive. Everything I've documented is on here. But there's more. She opened a folder. It contained a power of attorney form. This was notarized 3 weeks ago, she said. Dorothy transferred Walter's financial authority to Kendra. At the time, he was supposedly unconscious from a fall. But Walter seems fine now, Miriam said. Because the falls were induced, Constance replied. Most likely with timed insulin overdoses. Miriam felt nauseated. She's been poisoning her own husband? She didn't do it directly. But she's been complicit. The phone call you overheard? She was confirming the timing for Walter's next episode. Someone approached. An FBI agent. He walked toward the cottage. Constance moved swiftly. Faster than Miriam expected. She grabbed a briefcase that was clearly pre-packed. There's something else, Constance said. Something about why Edmund really divorced you. She handed Miriam a recording device. This is from a conference call, 2 months before your divorce. Listen to it when you're somewhere safe. As they gathered everything, Miriam noticed something outside. Edmund was arguing with someone. Kendra. She had reappeared. She was waving a document in the air. Her gestures were sharp. Panic dripped from every movement. Whatever schedule they had followed. It was collapsing. The FBI agent knocked at the door. Constance whispered fast. Tomorrow morning, Dr. Peterson will release Walter's real medical records. They prove a pattern. Induced hypoglycemia. Those grocery runs you made? They kept Walter alive. The realization settled on Miriam like a storm cloud. The food she brought. The containers Dorothy threw away. The word complications. The timing of every visit. They had waited for Walter's health to decline. To justify financial control. But Miriam had unknowingly stopped them. Her care had bought Walter time. Without her meals, he might have slipped away months ago. Constance opened the door. Good afternoon, Agent Morrison. I believe you'll want to see what we've documented. As Constance began her briefing, Miriam slipped out the back. Her phone buzzed. A message from Edmund. Miriam, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Can we talk? Please. Then another message. Same unknown number. Don't meet with Edmund alone. He knows more than he's admitting. Aw, friend. Miriam sat in the car. Her hands shook on the steering wheel. The divorce hadn't been about Edmund finding happiness. It hadn't been about love. It had been about removing the one person who might notice Walter's condition deteriorating. The one person who provided him with proper nutrition and medical oversight. The one person Kendra couldn't manipulate or control. As she drove away, Miriam saw more FBI vehicles arriving. The full truth was rising. But before the world saw it, Miriam had to listen to the final recording. The one that would explain why Edmund had really divorced her. The one that would destroy what she thought she knew about the past year. She waited until she was home. Doors locked. Curtains drawn. The file was dated early September, 2 months before the divorce. 3 voices. Edmund. Kendra. And a third man, unfamiliar, cold. Edmund's voice trembled. I don't want to do this. Miriam doesn't deserve. Deserve? Kendra cut in. Your mother's already lost $90,000. Your father's medical bills are crushing us. We're saving your family, Edmund. Then the third voice. Flat. Professional. Your wife is a librarian. She notices details. She has to be removed from the equation before the final phase. Removed? Edmund sounded shocked. Divorced, Kendra said quickly. Just separated from the family finances. A pause. Then Edmund again, barely audible. And if she suspects something? She won't, the man said. People see what they expect to see. A middle-aged wife discarded for a younger woman? It's the oldest story in the book. The file went on. Detailed. Calculated. Miriam sat frozen as the plan unfolded in her ears. The betrayal. The manipulation. The erasure. Edmund hadn't wanted the divorce. He had been cornered into it. The next morning brought chaos. News vans swarmed the neighborhood. The words on every broadcast: elder abuse, financial fraud, family conspiracy. Miriam's phone rang again and again. They wanted interviews. They called her the ex-wife who saw everything. She answered none of them. Instead, she drove to the hospital. Walter was there, undergoing evaluation. Dr. Peterson met her in the corridor. His face was grave. Mrs. Hartwell, he said. You need to know something. Your former father-in-law is alive because of your food deliveries. He showed her a chart. Walter's blood sugar across 12 months. These spikes, here and here, those were days when his system showed foreign medication. But these stable sections? They line up exactly with your Saturday visits. Miriam stared. My sugar-free meals. They weren't just healthy, were they? They balanced what they were giving him, Dr. Peterson said. Your portion sizes matched his insulin perfectly. Were you working with another physician? No, Miriam said softly. I was just careful. He's diabetic. Dr. Peterson blinked. You may have saved his life, he said. Purely by instinct and care. A commotion broke out near the waiting area. An angry voice. Shrill. He's my fiancé's father. I have power of attorney. It was Kendra. Miriam and the doctor approached the nurse's station. Kendra was there, shaking and holding a document. 2 FBI agents flanked her. Agent Morrison spoke calmly. Ma'am, that document is part of an ongoing investigation. This is harassment. Kendra snapped. I was invited into this family. Agent Morrison opened a folder. According to our findings, he said. You've been invited into 3 families. Each time under a different name. In each case, the elderly man suffered sudden, unexplained health issues. Kendra's face paled. Her mask cracked. They were dying anyway, she shouted. I gave them companionship in their final months. I deserved compensation for my care. The words hung in the room like smoke. Dr. Peterson stepped forward. Mr. Kelly wasn't dying, he said. Neither was Mr. Patterson. And Walter Hartwell is very much alive. Kendra's face went bone white. Kelly? Patterson, she stammered. How did you? Agent Morrison didn't blink. Credit reports. Social Security databases. Medical records from 3 states. Would you like to know how your previous fiancé's families describe you? Miriam watched the exchange with a strange mix of fascination and revulsion. The woman who had humiliated her, who had torn her marriage apart, was unraveling. Completely. Agent Morrison turned toward her. Mrs. Hartwell, we need to ask you some questions. In a quiet conference room, Miriam told them everything. The Saturdays. The soup. The whispers. The look on Dorothy's face when the containers hit the trash. Thanksgiving. Agent Morrison took notes carefully. Occasionally, he looked up. You never suspected your husband was involved? I thought he was having a midlife crisis, Miriam said. I blamed myself for not being enough. Morrison opened a file. The recordings suggest he had serious gambling debt. Kendra found him. She offered a way out and asked for access to his family in exchange. Miriam felt something heavy in her chest. Relief. And something sharper. So he chose money over marriage. Actually, Morrison said, checking the notes. He resisted. 4 months. The divorce wasn't his idea at first. That afternoon, Miriam wandered. She ended up at a small coffee shop. The one where she'd once seen Theodore. He looked up from his laptop when she entered. Not surprised. I heard about the arrest, he said gently. Are you okay? Theodore was everything Edmund wasn't. Calm. Grounded. He helped victims of financial fraud rebuild. He had spent years doing what Miriam just survived. I should have told you earlier, he said over coffee. I recognized the pattern. My mother went through something similar. Your mother. He nodded. A younger woman befriended her. Gained her trust. Gained access. She lost everything before we caught on. He pulled out his phone. A photo glowed on the screen. Kendra. Blonde. Different name. Lauren Davidson. Miriam's breath was caught. You knew. All this time. I suspected. But I needed proof. When you mentioned the Saturday meals and Walter's health, I reached out to someone I know at the bureau. Miriam felt the weight of it. The manipulation. The trust. Everything. So, you used me too? Theodore's eyes were soft. No. I approached you to warn you. But then I saw how determined you were. How kind. You kept showing up for people who didn't deserve it. He reached across the table and touched her hand. What started as concern became admiration. And that became something more. That evening, Miriam returned home. Edmund was on her steps. He looked tired. Older. Dorothy's been arrested, he said. My mother. Miriam sat next to him, leaving space between them. I never meant for it to go this far, Edmund said. I owed some very bad people. Kendra said she could help. She said it was temporary. Temporary? Edmund, they were poisoning your father. He broke then. Tears came. I didn't know about the medical part. I swear. On my father's life. Miriam looked at him. Really looked. She saw the man she had once loved. And the stranger he'd become. But you knew about the money, she said. I thought they'd just take a little. Not all of it. Not his health. And divorcing me? That was part of it too. They said you were too smart. Too observant. That you'd figure it out. He met her eyes. I ruined the best thing in my life, he said. For people who never cared about me. As if summoned by the conversation, Theodore's car turned into the driveway. He stepped out slowly, carrying a manila envelope. Miriam, he said. The FBI wanted you to see these immediately. Inside, photographs. Bank records. Transaction histories. A list of other potential victims. The final page stopped her breath. A letter. Written by Walter. From his hospital bed. His handwriting trembled, but the message was strong. To my daughter-in-law Miriam, who saved my life when my own family tried to destroy it. Your kindness was the light in our darkest plotting. I am ashamed of what my wife and son have done. But grateful beyond words for your pure heart. Edmund stood behind her. He read over her shoulder. His breath hitched. He knew, Edmund whispered. Dad always knew. Miriam looked between the two men in her life. One had betrayed her. One had earned her trust. Edmund, she said quietly. You need to tell the FBI everything. All of it. I will, he replied. Tonight. There was a long pause. Miriam. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but. She raised a hand. Ask me that question, she said. After you've earned an answer. Theodore waited as Edmund stood and left. He watched him drive away. You okay? He asked. I will be, Miriam replied. And she meant it. That night, her phone buzzed. A message from Constance. The truth is coming to light. Tomorrow will be difficult. But remember, you showed grace under pressure. That matters more than you know. An article was attached. Headline: Local woman's food deliveries thwart elaborate elder abuse scheme. Miriam smiled. Sadly. Grace under pressure. If that wasn't the story of her life. Tomorrow would bring more revelations. But tonight, for the first time in months, she felt peace. The truth had been ugly. Complicated. Painful. But it was finally hers. And that was enough. 2 months after the arrests, Theodore proposed. They stood in her library. The books around them had carried her through the darkest chapters. The grandfather clock chimed. Soft and steady. Theodore knelt. He didn't offer just a ring. He offered a future. Free from betrayal. Yes, Miriam said. The word came easier than she expected. She had learned that healing didn't mean forgetting. Only choosing to trust again. They planned a simple wedding. A small church. Reception at the community center where Theodore's nonprofit worked. Miriam wanted it quiet. Surrounded by people who had truly stood by her. The guest list was short. Her reading group. Walter, whose health had miraculously improved. Some of Theodore's colleagues. Former students who'd become lifelong friends. Constance would be her matron of honor. 1 week before the wedding. The trial began. Kendra's real name, Michelle Patterson. 17 known fraud cases. 6 states. Her method was always the same. Target vulnerable elderly men. Exploit them through their children. Create dependence. Gain access. Then disappear. The prosecution's star witness shocked the courtroom. Dorothy. She had agreed to testify in exchange for a reduced sentence. Miriam sat quietly as her former mother-in-law took the stand. Dorothy looked like a ghost. Gone was the styled hair. Gone was the lipstick. Just hollow eyes and courtroom lighting. She manipulated all of us, Dorothy said. She showed up when Edmund was desperate. When we were terrified about Walter's bills. The prosecutor leaned forward. And when did you realize the plan included harming your husband? Dorothy broke. The insulin doses. She said they were vitamins. Special supplements for diabetes. I was terrified we'd lose the house. I thought we had no other choice. Not at first. But by September. Dorothy's voice cracked. I heard Miriam coming up the driveway, and I panicked. I knew if she stayed for dinner and noticed his condition. So you made sure to discard her food, the prosecutor asked. Kendra said we had to. She said Miriam's presence disrupted the timing of everything. In the gallery, Miriam watched. A strange mix of vindication and pity stirred inside her. The woman who'd tormented her was also a prisoner of fear and greed. Then came Edmund's testimony. He spoke of debt, of desperation, of meeting Kendra outside a casino. She promised to solve all my problems, he said. She said she helped families maximize their assets. And the divorce? She said Miriam would never understand. That she was too rigid. Too honest. That we needed to protect her from what was happening. Miriam sat motionless. The irony was unbearable. Her honesty had once been framed as a flaw. But it had become her salvation. On the Friday before her wedding, Miriam visited Walter. He sat in his garden. Color had returned to his cheeks. His blood sugar had stabilized. Miriam, my dear, he said, rising slowly. Let me look at you. She helped him to his feet. His hands only trembled slightly now. I wanted to thank you properly, he said. The doctor said I only had maybe 2 more months if things had continued. They sat on the bench together. Your food wasn't just nourishment, Walter continued. It was hope. Every Saturday, knowing someone cared. I should have known something was wrong. You did, he said. Your intuition did exactly what I needed. Walter handed her a small wrapped box. This was my mother's. Dorothy was supposed to give it to you when Edmund proposed. She never did. Inside was a gold bracelet. Engraved, family above all. I want you to have it, Walter said. You are our true family, even when our own blood failed us. Saturday arrived, carrying spring's first warm breeze. Miriam wore her mother's pearls. Her dress was soft blue, the color of renewal. Outside the church, a crowd had gathered. Reporters. Community members. Handmade signs, justice for Walter. Thank you, Miriam. Inside, the pews overflowed. Her reading group took up an entire section. Each member wore a name tag with their favorite book quote. Walter rolled down the aisle in his chair. He insisted on participating, frailty be damned. Theodore's colleagues filled the opposite side. Many were fraud survivors, people his nonprofit had helped. And in the back row sat someone unexpected. Edmund. Alone. In dark suit. Their eyes met. He gave a small nod. Respect. Or maybe, finally, closure. The ceremony began. Constance stepped up and read from Corinthians. Love is patient. Love is kind. As Theodore took Miriam's hands, the back doors creaked open. A court clerk entered, carrying official documents. He approached the altar and whispered to Constance. She nodded. Smiled. The first true smile Miriam had seen from her in months. Constance turned to the room. I've just received word. The jury has reached its verdict. Gasps. Then silence. Michelle Patterson has been found guilty. All 17 counts: elder abuse, fraud, conspiracy. She's been sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. Applause erupted. Through tears, Miriam saw Walter lift his fist in quiet triumph. Dorothy's sentence came later. 5 years. Parole possible if she kept cooperating. As the celebration continued, Constance addressed the room. We gathered to witness a union. But we are also witnessing justice. Miriam, you reminded us, integrity needs no spotlight. Kindness needs no stage. She gestured to the crowd. Everyone here has been touched by your quiet grace. You fed the hungry, comforted the isolated, and, unknowingly, you stopped evil through simple human decency. Theodore squeezed Miriam's hand. Constance continued. In the darkest moments, when those who should have protected caused harm, you became Walter's guardian angel. The vows were short, but lasting. Theodore vowed to cherish her strength, to support her dreams, to join her in helping others. Miriam vowed to trust again, to love freely, to speak when justice called. They were pronounced married. The grandfather clock chimed noon. This time, it marked no countdown. It marked a beginning. At the reception, speeches overflowed with tears and joy. Walter raised his glass, shaking, but steady. To Miriam, who saved my life with soup, who fought for truth with grace, who proved the best revenge is a life well lived. Later, Miriam stood with Constance outside the community center. What now? She asked. Continue the fight, Constance said without hesitation. There are more Kendras out there. More Walters who need someone watching. She handed Miriam a card. Theodore's nonprofit could use you. Someone with your instincts. Someone who sees what others miss. Miriam slipped it into her purse. Her answer was already yes. As she and Theodore prepared for their honeymoon, a surprise waited. The car Edmund had once given her was gone. In its place, a vintage blue Buick. A note on the windshield. Walter's handwriting. Something old, something blue. This was mine and Helen's. May it carry you toward better horizons. They drove off. Rice. Flower petals. Spring air. Miriam looked back one last time. Constance stood in the doorway, legal pad in hand. Already taking notes for the next case. Walter waved from a van. Edmund lingered on the sidewalk. Watching. Perhaps with relief. Perhaps with sorrow. Any regrets? Theodore asked. Miriam thought of everything. The lies. The shame. The betrayal. But also, Walter's life saved. The truth revealed. Justice served. None, she said. Everything led to this. As they drove toward their new life, she saw a box on the dashboard. A gift. Another surprise? Open it. Inside, an ornate brass key. A tag with an address. The library downtown is being renovated, Theodore said. They need a director. Someone who believes a book, at the right time, can change everything. Miriam laughed. Bright and clear. Just like the right meal at the right time? Exactly like that. Behind them, the church bells rang. Justice had been served. Truth had prevailed. And love, quiet, steady, kind, had won. The grandfather clock chimed. Not for secrets. Not for lies. But for healing. For hope. For a life rebuilt in truth. Miriam Hartwell, now Miriam Caldwell, drove toward her future. Light-hearted. Clear-minded. Behind her lay betrayal. Ahead, redemption. And beside her sat a man who knew. Sometimes, the greatest strength comes from the quietest acts of courage. That, in the end, is more than enough. It is everything.